Everyone you know and love will one day die. This is an inescapable fact that haunts us every day, every moment. But what comes after death? Is there an afterlife, heaven, hell, or is it simply becoming nothing? Or is it becoming a ghost Pokemon? Which is why I aim to find which ghost Pokemon will you become when you die. Death is often how you die and become a ghost, and Pokemon is filled with ghosts, specifically 46 ghost Pokemon, at least until Sword and Shield released, in which you then got an additional 8, bringing us up to 54 ghost Pokemon. So I took it upon myself to scour through many a Pokédex entry, all the intricate lore and details and backgrounds of all these ghost Pokemon, to work out which one you would be when you die and inevitably expire and become forgotten about as your memories fade away into dust. First off though, we need to trim the chaff from this list, because there are some outliers which you just cannot abide by. Firstly, legendaries and mythical ghost Pokemon. No matter how hard you try, you will never be legendary or mythical in life nor death. Secondly, there's a bunch of ghost Pokemon which aren't necessarily ghosts themselves, they more so have like spooky themes to them, and these involve Alolan Marowak, who itself is not really a ghost, it's more of like a spirit medium who has spirits around them. It's not a ghost. You've got Decidueye, who is not an actual ghost, it's basically just a teenager going through an emo phase. Corsola's Galarian form, and therefore also Corsola, aren't actually ghosts themselves, or at least a ghost that you yourself can attain, because they're just dead coral reefs and less ghosts, and more so just a crippling reality of the effect that global warming and various climate changes are having on our coral reefs, and oh god, the world is dying. Then you have Sensu style Oricorio, which it's not an actual ghost, all it did was drink some purple nectar and become a ghost type Pokemon. That's not being a ghost, that's drinking blackcurrant squash. I do that every single day, and unfortunately have yet to expire from it. So with all of those bits and pieces done and dusted with, that leaves us with 43 left. So let's start with the pure ghost Pokemon. Misdreavus gains life force from scaring others. Therefore, if you work in like a haunted house or any other form of spooky scenario, congratulations, you're enough of a sociopath to be a Misdreavus. Mismagius, on the other hand, has a big hat, so if you're really into hats, well done, you've defined yourself entirely by wearing a hat and are becoming a Mismagius. Or you're Jamiroquai. You know when you're at school as like a child and they're like, gather around children, we're gonna bring in the puppet show, and then there's like a weird person in a box who is putting on like a puppet show, and it's definitely weird because it's probably like Punch and Judy. Or you're walking down the beach and you're like, oh, there's a really weird creepy box there with a person inside with puppets flailing outside of it, because it's the Punch and Judy show again. It's weird, it's creepy. Puppets are just creepy, they're cursed beings really. So cursed that anyone who ever engages in puppetry becomes a Shuppet, which in of itself is a puppet, and thus the cycle continues of puppet masters becoming puppets to then create more cursed puppets, to create puppet masters, to create cursed puppets, to create puppet masters. They are locked in an endless cycle for all time, and nothing will free them. Bayonet is basically just a stuffed toy that was thrown away and then infused with malice and became kind of sentient and out for blood. So if you are the sort of person who throws away childhood toys because you're like, I'm a big adult now and I don't need cuddly toys, then I'm sorry to break it to you, they will find you and they will kill you, and then you'll be stuffed inside a Bayonet. Duskull is all about breaking boundaries. or permeating through them and pursuing their goal ceaselessly and endlessly. So if you're the sort that's out there breaking boundaries, congrats, you're gonna be a Duskull. You go, you. Dusclops is completely hollow inside and devoid of really any life, and basically sucks everything into it, and ultimately nothing ever comes out. So it's basically Tory ministers and Tory governments. More so because those who look inside have their soul destroyed and are left desolate. Dusknoir receives weird spiritual signals to its antennae, which allows it to help guide lost spirits to the afterlife. So it's basically Uber drivers. Oof. Sinistea and Polteageist are there for the British colonialists, because basically if you go around enslaving several peoples, all for the basis of improving trade and stealing resources, such as tea, you deserve to be forever trapped in a teapot / cup of tea. Yamask has a weird mask on it, which is meant to be its own face from when it was once human, and if it ever sees that face, it basically starts crying. So if you died looking into a mirror or through the sheer horror of the human visage, congrats, you're going to be a Yamask for life. With Cofagrius, sure, it looks like an Egyptian sarcophagus. Pretty obvious what it's going to be, am I right? That's right, gold prospectors, because golden nuggets. They taste yeehaw. Now this is a perfect time to transition into the half ghosts, because why not? Also, I've run out of pure ghosts. Galarian Yamask is, according to Pokemon Shield, a vengeful spirit possessing some clay. So basically anyone who's ever had a really bad breakup and then got really into arts and craft classes, because they're definitely okay, and it doesn't matter that the clay heart that you accidentally dropped on the floor split perfectly in two, and that's a perfect metaphor for everything going on in your life, because you just keep letting everyone down. Runerigus is a possessed painting, and it's basically if you're a creative of any form really who's ever paid an exposure, because ultimately you will die of exposure, by which I mean starvation and the cold when you can no longer afford rent. Rotom is a weird ghost of appliances, therefore if you died by an appliance crushing you or killing you, you become a Rotom, and depending on which appliance killed you is which Rotom you'll become. Dragloak and Dragapult may look like stealth bombers, and that's because they are. They're basically stealth bombers that begin to feel apprehensive when they don't have a Dreepy inside of it, but when they do, they fire it out of their head like a stealth missile. What? I don't even, I genuinely thought I'd think of something on the fly and come up with something, but Gastly is basically a ball of gas that puts people to sleep. And the only people that actively enjoy doing that are anaesthetists, which also explains why Gastly primarily gather around decrepit old buildings, which are all the hospital closures after Tory governments are cutting the NHS. Haunter are creepy spirits that lurk in the darkness and watch you from afar, and with a single lick from their tongue, steal your soul. Stalkers and perverts. You know those sort of people, you may have a friend of them or two, who are basically always travelling. They go oh, I'm suffering from wanderlust, and basically have never worked a day in their life, and yet are somehow always on holiday to far reaches of the world, basically because they live off the bank of mum and dad. That's Gengar, who is always searching for a travelling companion, and therefore tries to kill people in order to get a travelling friend. Shedinja is a dried up husk of a bug Pokemon that was once alive and just kind of floats around unmoving. If you're really big into taxidermy, you're going to become a Shedinja, because if you're a weird enough person to try and forever encapsulate animals in the permanent state of rigor mortis, I don't know, you're weird. And also, you're going to become a weird bug thing now. Sorry. Oh, I've got it. So, Dragapult, Dreepy and Dracloak are a Basically, they're like internet celebrities who use their fan base as like, well, their toxic fan base and weaponize it in a way, because it's all perfect. The Dreepies are the toxic fan base that are weaponized. It all makes sense later. So then you've got the Drakloak, who feel apprehensive when like they've not got a Dreepy nearby. Basically, an up-and-coming internet celebrity who's like, oh, my figures are doing a little bad this time. Oh, where are all my followers? The Dreepy. And then you've got Dragapult, who's a stealth bomber and literally uses its fans who were once there to just give it a nice reassuring pat on the back to up and launch them like tactical nuclear missiles at other people. Spiritomb is 108 spirits all combined into a single malevolent ghost, which is a perfect analogy for corporate lifestyle, where you go in every single day and just get slowly destroyed by the humdrum of work and lose any sense of self and personality. So, for everyone who tragically died in a team building exercise at Corporate Incorporated, I'm sorry, you're going to become a Spiritomb now and be stuck together with Chad from accounting for life. Or Afterlife. Litwick, Lampent and Chandelure are what goths become who are really big into candles. Except for Lampent, who leeches off the souls of the departed and hangs around hospitals. So basically a health insurance clerk. For Phantump, we don't actually have to think of anything because the Pokédex explicitly already states that it's formed from children who get lost in the forest and then die, and their souls eventually possess the rotting stumps in forests and become a Phantump. What? Trevenant is a bigger, angrier tree who goes around causing harm to anyone who dares do harm to the forest and its surrounding area. So basically naturists. Wait. Oh god, not that one. Naturalists. Like David Attenborough. When he dies, this is what he'll become. What a twist. All those pictures of weird naked people, am I right? Oof. Do you know what's cool? A sword. Do you know what's cooler than a sword? Two swords. Do you know what's cooler than two swords? Well, nothing, but I guess a sword and shield is pretty cool, which is why you've got Aegislash, Doublade, and Honedge, who are what you become if you own a variety of weapons and swords and decide to put them on your wall, because for some reason you decide to summarize your entire personality as the sort of person who thinks it's cool to own a sword and display it, especially if it's a Japanese sword and you're not Japanese. That's definitely kind of weird. Dhelmise is a nightmare creature from the deep, which is basically just a bunch of seaweed, possessed seaweed, that wraps around various detritus in the oceans. Now in Pokemon, this is mostly like shipwreck goods, like anchors and steering wheels for ships, whatever it's called. In today's society, it would just be lots of plastics, which is why the people who become one of these are like cruise ship captains and people who go on cruise ships, because if you're adding to mass pollution of the ocean, you might as well be eternally damned to try and clean it up afterwards. Pumpkaboo is a like tiny little pumpkin, or like medium pumpkin or large pumpkin, and it comes in a lot of sizes. However, if you're really into, I guess, pumpkin spice as a concept, like pumpkin spice lattes, etc., you're gonna become a pumpkin. Pumpkaboo specifically, because get over it, it's not actually that nice. Pumpkin's not that tasty. It's not even a spice. Gourgeist goes around singing an eerie tune that basically causes people terrible pain and then they die. Whoops. However, they also take great joy in watching the suffering and pain of those trapped by their music, of which there is no escape. Who does this remind you of? Carol singers, demons of the night who take joy in subjecting others to their musical curse. Only carol singers are sick enough to revel in this eternal afterlife, being a Gourgeist. Drifloon is a sort of balloon ghost that takes children by the hand and then kidnaps them by slowly drifting them away to death. I'm choosing to ignore that bit and instead focusing on the fact that it's a balloon animal, by which I mean it's both a balloon and an animal because Pokemon are animals, which means if you do balloon animals, you become a Drifloon. Drifblim sleeps during the day and parties at night. And by parties at night, I mean is swept along by the winds of life. Your classic clubber. Sandygast is a delightful small pile of sand, and Palossand is an even larger pile of sand, both of which have come to life. And Palossand tends to have a big pile of bones underneath it, which are the remains of those that it has drained of life for sustenance. Now you might be thinking, duh, this is going to be like a sculptor or children who die on the beach or something like that. Wrong. This is actually the relationship you find with workers who primarily, and builders who primarily deal with cement and other such like foundations and building, who find themselves having to deal with a disproportionate relation between the manager and the worker. Whilst the workers do all the hard work, the managers sit at the top with bloated income due to luxurious PFI contracts. The bones beneath the Palossand are the bones of the workers not getting a fair wage. Frillish and Jellicent use their paralyzing arms to basically grab people off of boats and in the sea and drag them to the bottom of the ocean where they eventually die. Who would be cursed, I guess, to this level of afterlife? Lifeguards. Because after spending most of your life trying to stop people from drowning, go ahead and drown people. You've earned it. You've earned it. Just drown some people. How bad could it be? Sableye is really into gems. So much so that the gems are physically growing out of its body. So, if you yourself are also being into gems, congratulations, you've bought that really weird, gemstone from the internet, but at the same time, you are going to die of starvation because you can no longer afford to pay for food and become a Sableye. Froslass goes around freezing people with its -60 Fahrenheit breath, or -51 Celsius breath for those of us in the rest of the world, and basically ends up displaying the frozen corpses of its victims in its house as trophies. I'm choosing to interpret that as giving out delicious frozen treats, and the trophies are the wonderful smiles of happy customers. So, ice cream van drivers and dispensers. Golette and Golurk are large clay-like golems that are infused with spiritual energy of the dead in order to move around. However, it turns out ancient civilization used these as labourers. So do you know who gets to suffer this eternal damnation fate thing? Managers and landowners. Specifically those who use cheap labour from overseas primarily, who are getting scammed to look after their government subsidised land and basically reaping the big bucks while they end up paying their workers reduced wages due to paying them in board. Am I being a bit too much here? And finally, we have Mimikyu, who is a Pokemon that creates a disguise to basically get close to other Pokemon and is a sad and lonely Pokemon. Plus, if its facade ever ends up getting damaged in any way, shape or form, it has a crisis and becomes really sad and panics, as it then has to hurry away to try and fix its false persona. Which is basically me! Hooray! I'm going to become a Mimikyu, no one else. That's it. That is all
43
ghost Pokemon and who becomes them when we eventually die. So knowing this, we can all look forward to the sweet embrace of death once more and let the calming influence of death take over. What? Hello, and thank you for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, why not leave a like or a comment about your own premonitions of death to do with Pokemon. Anyway, that was a fun video, probably. I don't know. Everything is fine. If you want, check out some of my other works. I've got one, so much smoke, up here. It's about an indie game called Wilmot's Warehouse. Or just down here, there'll be one about Fire Emblem. Sure, why not? Otherwise, you can click on my face, where there is a face orb to subscribe. Anyway, thank you, and goodbye.